With the latest agriculture news from across the state and nation, it's time for the AgNet News Hour from AgNet West. Here's your host, Sabrina Halverson.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning on this Monday for the AgNet News Hour. Coming up later, we're chatting with the International Fresh Produce Association about a new partnership aimed at getting young kids excited about eating their fruits and vegetables. We will also talk with an expert on the fertilizer market about the bullet that was dodged with the port strike. But we are starting out today with a conversation on pollinators and solar power. Joining me on the phone is Peter Berthelson, president of Conservation Blueprint. Well, to start out, tell us a little bit about Conservation Blueprint. I've been reading about your organization this morning, and I'd love for you to tell us about it.
Yeah, Conservation Blueprint is a business that spends a significant amount of our time and energy consulting and assisting with utility scale solar projects all across the country, helping them deliver multiple environmental benefits, primarily achieved through the type of vegetation that we design and associate with these solar energy projects.
Why is it important to focus on the vegetation around solar projects?
Well, because that's how we're able to deliver and achieve these multiple environmental benefits. Could be things that are really important for the community, adjoining landowners, the solar developer, like soil health, water quality, reduced danger of fire, pollinator health and habitat benefits, benefits for grassland songbirds. All of these additional multiple environmental benefits that we can layer on to the clean renewable energy can be designed through the vegetation that we establish associated with the project.
So, what are some of the ecological benefits of integrating, these pollinator-friendly practices into solar project planning?
Sure, they can be wide ranging. I'll just give you one specific example, and that would be how projects like this can be highly supportive of honeybee health and the sustainability of beekeeping as an industry. If we have a large project that's say between 500 and 2,000 acres in size, and we can establish high quality pollinator habitat on it, it can increase the amount of US sourced honey production and help honeybee hives be healthier and increase their survival rate. And so just as an aside, I said US sourced honey production. People might not be familiar with the fact that here in this country, in the United States of America, for the honey that we consume as a nation, in all of our food products and in other ways, only 25% of that honey is produced in the United States. Never used to be that low, but it's that low now because we have reduced access to high quality pollinator habitat. These projects are being designed as a source where beekeepers can bring beehives and set up apiaries and increase US sourced honey production.
There's a lot of talk when we talk about solar about just using, green energy and bringing pollinator health and habitat into that. In my opinion, makes it a fuller picture, more complete picture of being good for the environment as we're collecting our energy. What are some ways that
Mhm.
people can start looking more toward this effort?
I think the first and foremost, when you hear about a solar energy project that's coming to your community, to your county, to your state, raise your hand and ask the question, are multiple environmental benefits being woven into the design of that project? Are pollinator health and habitat benefits being included? How are we ensuring that we're maintaining soil health, that we're protecting water quality? Be the person that raises your hand and asks those questions, because as projects, solar energy projects, begin the process of being located on the landscape in a community, in a county, and going through the permitting process, that's the exact moment in time at which we want to be asking those very important fundamental questions.
If you've missed that opportunity, and let's say the solar arrays are already up, is there still an opportunity to correct things or to then bring in a focus on pollinator
Mhm.
habitat?
Very challenging. I would not say that the answer is no, but I refer to that as retrofitting pollinator habitat into an existing project. And it's very challenging. It can be very expensive. It can take multiple years to achieve. And so, really, the best investment of time and dollars and effort is on the front end to build all these multiple environmental benefits into the project before things are built.
So when people are planning their solar project, then what are some things that they should be considering to keep in mind this habitat for pollinators?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, there needs to be what's referred to as a vegetation management plan that is developed for that project. This is the roadmap, the guide, the code for how the site is prepared, planted, and managed to deliver these multiple environmental benefits. And remember that the seed mixture that's designed and used, how it's planted, how the site is prepared for that planting, that will inform all of these other environmental benefits that go beyond pollinator health and habitat to include soil health, water quality, grassland, bird populations, just all of these many other environmental benefits. They're all designed in this vegetation management plan. And that is really one of the most important aspects of ensuring that these aspects are thought about and then delivered on a project.
We are speaking with Peter Berthelson, president of Conservation Blueprint, and we will continue right after this quick break.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. Here's Sabrina Halverson.
We're talking this morning with Peter Berthelson, president of Conservation Blueprint, about pollinators and solar power. Let's talk about the seed mixes for a minute because your business does make custom seed mixes for certain projects. What kind of
Yep.
thought goes into those? What are you considering as you make these custom seed mixes?
Yeah, great question. For a utility scale solar project, there are no less than 16 factors that have to go into designing that seed mixture. So think of it like a recipe. There's 16 different ingredients in this recipe. And some of those factors, ingredients that would go in there would be things like how tall is the lower panel above the ground? And if the lower panel height above the ground is 24 inches, we would design a seed mixture that didn't grow taller than 20 inches. So the vegetation doesn't shade the panels because the primary objective of the project is that generation of renewable energy. There's 15 other factors. What does it cost? Are the seed mixture components available? How quickly will they establish? Can we include components that generate nitrogen, that fix nitrogen? Are they able to withstand the pressures of mowing once or twice a year? Um, there's just a whole range of factors that have to be determinative in selecting the species that we put into our seed mixtures.
You mentioned the height of the solar panels. That's important to take into consideration from what I understand. And I did not realize this until I was, reading up in preparation for this interview. I never thought about it before. But this is something people should consider when they're making their plans, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very foundational to think about with a project. So on what we call community scale, distributed scale, individual projects for a property, it's not uncommon for those lower panels, the lower panel height above the ground to be much higher. Okay. On a utility scale solar project, 500 acres to say 2,000 acres in size, it's an important factor to the overall cost of the project of how high those panels are above the ground, because to go from 24 inches to 36 inches, you have to have another 12 inches, another foot of steel spread out over across 2,000 acres. That can be millions of dollars in cost. So the kind of industry standard on utility scale solar is for those lower panels to be 20 to 22 inches above the ground. Vegetatively, that's really, really short. It's not very tall for us to have species that we can use that don't grow taller than that. It's really important because if we were to design a seed mixture that grew to, say, 30 inches tall and the lower panel height was 22 inches above the ground, that would necessitate that the team that manages that site has to go out and mow it. Well, there's an additional cost. And when we mow a site, not only does it cost money to mow it, but we're removing the pollinator health and habitat components of that seed mixture. So this is a very intricate, detailed plan where all of these gears have to mesh. And the way that plan works is through this vehicle that we again call a vegetation management plan that has considered all of these aspects.
So, as we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners, maybe for companies that are considering getting more into solar or who are listening and have more questions?
Yeah, I think that I would just say that the public is keenly interested in designing solar energy projects that also deliver multiple environmental benefits. Clearly, we're all excited about clean, renewable energy. Everybody wants that. But when we have a project that goes in, let's make sure that we're designing, planning, and delivering benefits for soil health, water quality, pollinator health and habitat, grassland birds, carbon sequestration, all of these many different aspects. And they can all be designed and delivered by just thinking about it on the front end with a great vegetation management plan.
All right. Thank you again so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It's a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
This is the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halverson, and we will be back in just a moment. This segment is brought to you by Live Earth Products. To get to know a little more about Live Earth Products, we're talking on the phone today with Vice President Russell Taylor. Let's talk about LEP. What are the key benefits of your products for farmers in the Western Zone?
So Live Earth Products, we mine and manufacture a ingredient called humate. Now, humate is rich in organic acids called humic acid and fulvic acid. Now, those are common components in your soil organic matter. And here in the Western United States, unlike those places around the Mississippi going east, actually have very low organic matter. Now, your organic matter is key think of it as the pantry in the soil. So it's key to water retention, nutrient retention, nutrient cycling, microbial activity, those kind of things. So anything that's going to impact the increase in soil organic matter will also impact things like water holding capacity and nutrient holding capacity, which is a big deal here in the West when water is not as abundant as it is in the east side of the United States.
Now, what about nitrate? I know nitrate can be a problem in some soils. So how do LEP products help reduce the nitrate problem on saturated soils?
So Live Earth Products, it's not unique in how we affect nitrogen, but any organic matter will help retain nitrogen. So typically, the mechanisms that we use are blending the nitrogen with the humate. So what happens is the nitrogen will attach to the humic acid, and you will see less of the processes that degrade or volatilize nitrogen. So nitrogen will either convert to a gas, or it'll be converted by microbes into a nitrate and leach to the soil. So the longer you have that product is not being volatilized or converted, the longer opportunity for that nutrient to be used by the plant. We have university testing that has shown that when you blend these organic acids with the nutrient, you give that plant a longer opportunity to use that nutrient before it's lost, volatilized, or converted.
To get to know more about Live Earth products, you can visit them online at liveearth.com. That is spelled LIVEARTH.com.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. Here's Sabrina Halverson.
Joining us for this segment is Molly Van Loo, the Vice President of Nutrition and Health for the International Fresh Produce Association. Molly, good morning. Thanks for joining us. We wanted to talk today about a couple of things that the IFPA is doing. Let's start off talking about Kids Eat in Color. I mean, you kind of can guess what this is just from the title of it, but tell me about this partnership, please.
Yeah, so Kids Eat in Color is primarily an Instagram account, I would classify that as, that has more than 2 million followers. And it is run by Jennifer Anderson. She has a team, but she's really the face of it and the founder, and connects with parents and caregivers, primarily in the United States, but she definitely has a global following as well. And is really aiming to provide evidence-based but realistic uh, nutrition advice, mostly focused on fruits and vegetables, because that, for the most part, I think is where families and parents are trying to focus the most on. So it kind of naturally made sense. I can kind of talk about how it came to be, but as we were trying to connect with that community, it was a natural partnership for us.
So, what are some of the things that you're doing through this partnership?
Sure. So we as IFPA were active in the White House Nutrition Conference that happened, hard to believe, 2 years ago. And as part of that, as I'm sure you're aware, the government asked that industry come forward and make commitments that that could address a need that the government can't necessarily do on their own. So one of those commitments was around nutrition education. And we kept it pretty vague because we wanted to make sure that we were, not making up what that looked like and based on like what we thought, but really trying to work with stakeholders to understand what the gaps were. And throughout that process, we started out with in a couple areas. One, providing some education for medical schools and medical school students around what produce prescriptions are. We partnered with the company on that. We also provided some recipes for schools to help them meet USDA nutrition standards that reduce added sugar. And then, honestly, I follow a number of Instagram accounts to just kind of understand what consumers in general are kind of seeking and who they're following. And sometimes, Instagram accounts are evidence-based, sometimes they're not. And I was really drawn to Kids Eat in Color, and saw what she was trying to do. And honestly, as a mom of a toddler too, I really connected with what she was doing. And she had developed these posters around how to positively talk about eating a wide variety of fruits and vegetables. And when you go in a pediatrician's office today, often you can see kind of negative messaging around what not to eat. And this kind of is taking a different approach of how you talk to kids in a positive manner about what to eat. And when you talk about red foods in an age-appropriate manner of what may get them excited about eating those particular foods. And the posters were really popular with parents, but she had posted that she had talked to her own children's pediatricians and had gotten it into their pediatric office, but was hoping to get them in other pediatricians' office. And I thought, we're trying to do something. This would meet, obviously, there's a huge need. We would love to work with pediatricians because they obviously are providing, are a trusted resource for parents, but we know that the medical community in our country are not getting as much nutrition education as they want either. So could we kind of meet that need through providing support of these posters? So I emailed them, not to kind of tell you how the sausage was made, and just said like, hey, is there, a way that we could collaborate on this? And Jennifer was excited about it as well. So we decided to provide posters that we will ship to pediatric offices or pediatric facing offices that they can put in their patient and exam rooms. So that's kind of how we got here.
It has been a very, very long time since I was in a pediatrician's office, but to have these kind of bright, colorful, fun posters up in their office where the kids as well as the parents can see them, that in itself, I think, is probably very beneficial.
Exactly. Yeah, they're really exciting. And, in this age of like digital, everything digital, at first you can hear like, oh, a poster, is that really all that relevant? But anyone who spent time in a pediatrician's office know that you spend time sitting in exam rooms, kind of waiting for the doctor to come. So it is a time where, especially earlier in a child's life, where you really have like the attention in general of parents and wanting to do right by their kids, and then literally have the time while they're waiting. And then there is, a QR code that links them to additional resources. But yeah, we're really excited that they're fairly large, and that kids and their parents are going to be able to see this like awesome visualization of what eating the rainbow looks like.
We're speaking with Molly Van Loo, Vice President of Nutrition and Health for the International Fresh Produce Association. We will continue the conversation right after this.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. Here's Sabrina Halverson.
We're talking this morning with Molly Van Loo, Vice President of Nutrition and Health for the International Fresh Produce Association. And approaching foods like that by color with kids, again, I don't have any small kids, but saying, hey, do you want to pick out an orange food, or would you like to get a blue food today, or something like that, to connect kids in a different way with their fruits and vegetables. Does that open a door for new conversations or just new ways to reach children, would you say?
Absolutely. I mean, kids love colors, right? And it's just this interactive way. But the great part about it is it's not just a strategy to talk to kids. It's actually based on the USDA My Plate, the dietary guidelines. So the dietary guidelines actually, recommend over the course of a week to eat vegetables from all of the different, which they call the 5 subgroups. So you have starchy vegetables, you have red and orange vegetables, dark green vegetables. There's an other category. And so this is evidence-based. And obviously, if we put up a poster that said like eat from your DGA subgroups, that might not be as compelling for anyone. But when you can kind of meet parents and the kids where they are, it is a great opportunity to get them excited about eating produce.
So what are some of the other partnerships that you're working on at this time that you want to chat about?
Yeah, so I had shared that we worked on the school nutrition recipes, and that is, there are 30 million school meals, probably actually more than that, served every day. Not as many school breakfasts, but more and more kids are eating school breakfast. And so we are working with, we have K through 12 school nutrition directors as our members, but this is available to anybody. The produce prescription video, we are working with a company called Osmosis, which works with medical schools to put out nutrition education. We would love to continue working with Kids Eat in Color. We had this kind of overwhelming demand, so we're working through the demand that we have now, but want to see where we can take this as well, because we know when you look at the different populations in the US, like WIC agencies is a really great opportunity too, because parents are meeting with nutrition counselors in WIC offices. So we're going to see kind of where this partnership can go, and we're definitely open to additional opportunities.
You mentioned the White House program from 2 years ago. Let's remind our listeners a little bit about that and some of the ideas that may have sparked.
Yeah, so I believe they got about $8 billion in financial commitments, and some of that is research. There is a research partnership with the Rockefeller Foundation and American Heart Association around food as medicine and produce prescriptions, and that's really given a huge boost to those programs to help complement the existing policy that's happening. There are just, and then there are, micro local commitments that are being made. So it's really exciting that, in some ways it can be hard to track because there's so many different things happening, but, for the most part, it just sparked so much momentum. And, in my space at least, you can't go anywhere without witnessing organizations that are involved in this work doing something, be it policy or outside the policy world, to kind of address those goals of the White House conference, which are to end hunger and reduce diet-related disease by 2030.
And so you've been able to kind of take those sparks and really run with them and start making, big, good progress into different programs.
Yes, exactly. Yep. And it just gives folks something to unite around. So we have this kind of collective strategic goal. Obviously, it can feel pretty vague, but 10 years ago, we probably only would have been focusing on ending hunger. And, the second part of that is ending hunger with nutrient dense foods. So it's been a huge opportunity and responsibility, frankly, for the produce industry to step up and meet those goals. And we've been doing this for a long time, but I think it even brings more folks into the fold when we're focused on nutrient dense foods in that effort as well.
Yeah, it does. Any other comments or any other programs that you want our listeners to know about?
Yeah, just that, we're excited. And the Farm Bill is hopefully will be passed soon. And there's a lot of great opportunities in that bill to increase fruit and vegetable consumption, be it just underlying support for the specialty crop industry, the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program, which is a hugely popular program available to low-income elementary schools. It's oversubscribed, really popular. That helps kids increase fruit and vegetable consumption, introduces them to where exactly their food is coming from and the growers and the farmers that produce it. And then again, this food as medicine space is just really taking off. It's further along in some states than others, but we're working hard to make sure that can be eventually a program available no matter where you live. And then also some smaller programs that we're helping to work on pilots, Indian Health Service, Department of Veterans Affairs, that are piloting produce prescription programs. So we're excited to get the data from that and see how we can scale that type of work.
Just for my listeners who are hearing about the food as medicine and the produce prescription programs, if they want more information on that, what's the best thing for them to do?
It's a great question. It kind of depends where you are. We have some information on our website at IFPA, or I'm sorry, freshproduce.com. We also work with our partners at the National Produce Prescription Collaborative, and that can show you if there's a program available in your state. But a lot of the momentum is happening at the state Medicaid offices. So if you have connections there, that's definitely an area to pursue.
Well, do you have any other final thoughts for our listeners today?
Just that, we're working hard to, 1 in 10 Americans are meeting the DGA recommendations for fruit and vegetable consumption. There are certain subsets of populations, some that people may not assume, that are doing better than others. And we are chipping away at making sure that all Americans meet those DGA targets.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Molly. I appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks, Sabrina.
When we come back, we're going to be talking about pollinators and solar panels.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. Here's Sabrina Halverson.
Joining us now is Mark Milam, Senior Editor of Fertilizers at Independent Commodity Intelligence Service. Mark, thanks for joining. So we've both been watching the potential port strike very closely for, to relay news to our audiences. And fortunately, the strike did end, at least tentatively, until January, it looks like. But you cover this from the angle of what this could mean for the fertilizer industry. And so I just wanted to get your thoughts, if we do face another port strike like this, what could that mean for the fertilizer industry?
Well, with this strike, it came at a period where the U.S. demand is a little bit low. Harvest is the main focus of the farmers right now. But if this was to come back in January, that could have a much more severe impact, because we are talking about knocking on the doorsteps of spring season right there. And usually January is a month in the U.S. fertilizer industry where everything is starting to crank up and momentum's building for
not only deliveries, but what purchases are going to be made, because by then farmers know what crops they're going to plant. So January leads into that really crucial period. It's the biggest time of the year for the U.S. fertilizer. It's our peak period. And so if this strike was to develop in January and it had any kind of duration, then we would see a much more intense reaction from the fertilizer industry than they had right now. And part of their kind of passive attitude towards this strike was they had just recently gone through the Canadian railroad strike, which also got resolved rather quickly. But that one caused a lot of concerns across the industry, because that one was coming, several weeks ago when a lot of product needed to be moved. And the biggest concern was not only product coming down from Canada, but product going up into Canada, like ammonia and other nitrogen products. So they had gone through that. They kind of freaked out, and then nothing really happened. So when this port strike came about, they kind of had this attitude, like I had shared with you, that they thought it was going to be resolved pretty quickly. And, they were right this time, but we'll see what comes in January. From what I've seen, I believe that this will be resolved. It appears that the offer on the table has been considerably increased. It's pretty much a fight over wages, and it seems like that they're presenting the union with a pretty fair offer over the time period that they're talking about. So I have feelings that we won't get to January and still have another strike, that they'll try to get this hammered out pretty soon.
And this is something that you follow fairly closely for your organization. And in fact, could you tell our listeners a little bit about the Independent Commodity Intelligence Services?
Yes, so ICIS is a leading global petrochemical price reporting agency. And within the organization, we have a fertilizer team. It's a rather small group of us, but we work really hard, and we cover the global fertilizer markets, all of it. And so my main focus is here in the U.S., Canada, and Mexico as well, but the U.S. is the big driver of what I do, and I cover the wholesale side of the industry, production, the New Orleans barge market, the terminals. We do look at retail, and we do look at agriculture as well. And we put out weekly pricing reports, and we also do daily updates. So we're quite a good source for fertilizer market information on a daily basis.
And so you touched on it when we first started the interview, but looking at port strikes like this, they can wreak havoc on the industry, the agriculture industry in whole, in many different ways, but the fertilizer industry too. And the fertilizer industry has been facing so many problems here in the last several years. Just with the commodity, or excuse me, with input prices and things. If we do face another port strike, what could that mean for the industry overall?
It really depends on the timing. Like I said, if this starts up again in January, that's a pretty bad time for it to come down. And it really depends on the duration of the strike, because how does that affect imports of product that are coming in? Because the U.S. still does rely on a good amount of imports to cover its needs. But then there's also times of the year where we have a little bit of glut of product, and so we become an exporter with products like UAN. And it really, like I say, it's timing and how long it would be as to how great the impact should be. I think just having a strike kind of just unsettles the markets in general. So you would expect that no matter what, it would cause some concern. It's just how much concern is really how long and when it comes.
We're talking with Mark Milam, Senior Editor of Fertilizers at Independent Commodity Intelligence Services, ICIS, and we will be back in just a moment to have more on this discussion.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. Here's Sabrina Halverson.
Welcome back. We continue now with Mark Milam, Senior Editor of Fertilizers at Independent Commodity Intelligence Services. With avoiding the current port shutdown, or at least avoiding it dragging on any longer, do you think there's hope that between now and January they'll be able to come to an agreement?
On the port side, yes, I do, because as I mentioned, I have seen coverage of some of the negotiations, and the wage offer has been increased. I want to say that it initially was about a 50% increase over a number of years. And yesterday I saw that it had been lifted to 62%. Neither side of the negotiation is confirming that, but that's what's being reported by sources close to the negotiations. So that's a pretty fair wage increase over a number of years. I mean, it almost works out to, if I was looking at it, maybe 9 to 10% wage salary increase per year when it's broken down. I don't know if they're going to actually structure it that way, but for the average American worker, they would be pretty happy with that kind of yearly pay increase. I would like to think that last time I saw the economic report that the amount of pay increases for the American workers doesn't hover around that number. It's more like in the 2 to 4% range. So it's a pretty sweet offer, and at least the union and the other side have shown some willingness to try to address the issue and not been excessively stubborn or posturing in the media. So I think that there's a pretty cordial tone. And, I know the federal government said they wouldn't get involved, but if this was to go on, you've got to expect that they would have to step in at some point and tell them to knock it off and get a deal done. So I'm optimistic. I think most people in the fertilizer industry are optimistic that while this was just delayed, that between now and January, that this will get resolved, and that they'll strike a solid deal, and that we won't have at least port disruptions for a while. And the Canadian rail system, which is another important aspect, seems to have their labor issues settled for now. And some of the U.S. railroads have recently struck labor deals to kind of keep peace on their front. So hopefully we've passed through this period in 2024 where we can go a couple of years without some more labor strife that affects logistics.
All right. And do you have any final thoughts for our listeners today?
Well, one thing that I will say right now, the one trend that we are seeing, and it's something to watch, is that the escalated tensions in the Middle East right now are having an impact on fertilizer prices here in the U.S., at least for urea. It's driving up the barge price this past week because people are concerned what could happen long term with supply and global inventory, and this whole market is tethered to each other. So when there gets to be issues and tightness on one side, it may not immediately affect the other side, but eventually it kind of just draws it all together and gets a little bit tighter. So we'll have to watch. Demand right now is a little bit low because of the recent tropical weather issues and because harvesting is going on. So it would tend to say that prices should have stayed a little bit stable, but they are going up right now. And if I was a grower and I hadn't locked in some of my commitments, I would think about doing it now, because this may seem to be like a high side right now, but if this problem continues to grow worse over there overseas, then I believe that prices will continue to click up for a while, at least for certain products. Now, the one thing that I do think is an advantage for U.S. farmers, they realized a couple of weeks ago, maybe 2 months ago, that prices really weren't going to dip any lower. So I have heard that there was a lot of commitments and that a good deal of fertilizers in place already, positioned and in place already for fall applications after the harvest and for some of the spring needs. So that's good for those who did it. They probably got the cheapest supply that they're going to get for the next couple of months. But there's also some that are saying, well, this is an artificial escalation because of this tension. Eventually, everybody will calm down a little bit more and prices will settle back down. So do you be patient and wait a little bit longer? But I just think that if you haven't gotten some of your inventory committed, you might want to do that right now and at least hedge a little bit of the grain that you've harvested, or the soybeans or cotton or whatever crop that you're harvesting right now. That way you've at least got some of your needs covered and you're not in a total panic if either the crop prices go down or the fertilizer prices continue to go up, or if both happens. And that's about it, because we're at this period where we should normally be seeing just the focus on harvesting and fall fertilizing, and there's a lot of things that have been going on in the market, the hurricanes, the port strike, and now more global conflict. So there's a lot more factors than there would normally be in a typical fall for the U.S. fertilizer industry and its participants.
Well, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for taking a few minutes out for us. Thank you again to Mark, and thank you to you for joining us. That is today's top agriculture news. I'm Sabrina Halverson. Thank you for sharing your morning with us.
To get more information on the topics you heard today, visit AgNet West at agnetwest.com. You can also stay connected by following us on our social media at AgNet West on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Also look for Sabrina Halverson on Facebook, and be sure to subscribe to our podcast by searching for AgNet West on your podcast app. Thank you for listening to the AgNet News Hour from AgNet West. AgNet West Radio Network, your primary choice for agriculture news.